You're listening to the Confidence Within podcast. If you are a successful professional entrepreneur who is nonetheless struggling with the fear of public speaking, then you are in the right place. This podcast is all about igniting your inner confidence, learning to show up with genuine authority and brilliance, and becoming the best version of yourself. I'm your host, Victoria Lyazniansky, and welcome to my show. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Confidence Within podcast. Today I want to talk to you about growth mindset. Specifically, let's focus on why you might not be utilizing your growth mindset fully, why you might not be growing, even though you feel you're always learning. I obviously don't need to tell you that it's important to have growth mindset. You wouldn't be listening to a podcast, you wouldn't be trying to improve yourself if you didn't believe that abilities can be developed, they can be improved, they can be expanded through learning. So I know all of my listeners have growth mindset. And myself, I've always believed I've had growth mindset. For as long as I remember myself, I've always been trying to learn new things. I've always been trying to expand my mind, to expand my horizons, to do things that were challenging, to do things that were interesting to me, just basically on a whim. For example, I've been a student literally for decades. I love to learn, I love to grow. And while sometimes we learn because we need knowledge, right? Sometimes we learn because it's just simply fun. For example, about 15 years ago, I decided that it would be fun to go to film school and just try to learn filmmaking and film producing as a hobby. And so I did it. And by the way, at the time, I had a 2-year-old and I had a business. But I still felt that it was interesting for me to try something new. And so I did go to film school online for a couple of years and I learned a lot, which ended up helping me later down the road, but that's a story for another time. But then I stopped because I had my second son and I was just too busy to have an extensive hobby like this. But then another 6, 7, 8 years later, I realized, well, I have this unfinished master's degree and I feel really bad about leaving something unfinished. And so I went back to the same school. I did change my degree to communications, which at the time was a lot more appropriate for me. And also, honestly, I felt it was a lot easier and quicker for me to finish. And I am literally on my last semester right now. I'm about 4 weeks away from graduation and finally getting my master's in communication. And that's, by the way, my second master's. My first is in computer science. I really don't need the second master's degree, but it is what it is. I decided to finish and I finished. But my point is, we all love learning. It feels good to learn, right? It's easy. You watch a video, you understand it, it all makes sense. You feel good about yourself now that you learned something new. And you tell yourself, this is a breakthrough. This is my growth. But then, nothing happens. You either remember the information and you go on with your life as before, or you forget everything that you've learned and you go on with your life as before. Why isn't learning enough? Why, when we learn something, more often than not, it doesn't really impact our life profoundly. It doesn't really give us the breakthrough that we were hoping for. Because learning is not enough. The key to taking full advantage of the growth mindset is not to learn. The key is to become a better version of yourself. I'm going to say it again. It is not about learning. It is about becoming a better version of yourself. And how do you do it? By following what I call the circle of mastery. Learning, implementing, internalizing, forming a habit, and finally, mastering. So the value of the growth mindset is not that you constantly learn something new, even though obviously learning something new is better than not learning at all. Learning anything and believing that you can improve yourself is ultimately a million times better than having a fixed mindset. The value of the growth mindset is in mastering something new. Not just learning something new, but mastering something new. So let's take public speaking as an example, okay? I've had so many students go through my little workshops or mini courses or masterclasses where I would teach something that they can actually implement the same day. And everyone would go through that little program and say, oh, best thing ever. I've learned so much. Thank you. I feel on top of the world. I feel that my life is about to change. But then only very, very few take that information and go through the full circle of mastery. Meaning that they learned something from me, then they went and they implemented it right away. Then they worked to internalize it. Then they worked on forming a habit around it, meaning that it becomes a part of who they are. And then continued internalizing and forming a habit until they completely mastered that new skill. That's the circle of mastery. Learning is just the first step. Learning is the easy step. Learning is the step that everybody loves because it is so easy and at the same time feels so good. But it's not enough. And so I want to challenge you today to stop learning and start mastering. If you learn anything new today, maybe at your job, maybe at your business, or maybe you binge listening to my podcast today and you found an episode that really resonated with you, something that you realized is going to make a huge difference in your life. So here is what I encourage you to do today, okay? Let's move on to the circle of mastery today. Whatever you learned today, map it out on the circle of mastery and decide what steps you need to take to implement, internalize, form a habit around it, and finally master it. Literally, take out a piece of paper and write it down. This is what I learned. These are my steps, how I'm going to implement it. These are my steps, how I'm going to internalize it. These are my steps of how I'm going to form a habit around it. And this is how I'm going to get to mastery. Next, open your calendar. Yes, you have to put these steps in your calendar because as you know, if it's not scheduled, it is not going to happen. And once you put all of the steps in your calendar, then you create a system of accountability for yourself where you check with yourself literally every day. And don't jump on new things. Don't go and learn new shiny objects just because they look attractive. First, master that one thing that you are committed to. Don't start learning other things until you have a chance to at least start forming a habit around these new things that you're learning. Remember, mastering takes time and work. But if you want real lasting results, this is how you apply the growth mindset. Again, these are the steps to truly master something new that you learn. Number one, determine what you're learning and learn it. That's the easy step. Number two, write down the exact actions, steps that you need to take to implement that one thing that you learned. How are you going to implement it in real life? And then write the actions of how you're going to internalize what you've learned. And then figure out how you're going to form a habit around making this your own, making it a part of you. And then number three, you put all of these actions in your calendar, you map it out so that you know exactly when you are going to be working on it. Not as easy as learning, right? Because now we're talking about actual work. And the last step is you create a system of accountability for yourself where you check with yourself every day to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks and you will be on your way. To not just learn, feel good about it, and then go on with your life like nothing happened. You're going to be on your way to truly becoming a master of anything that you learn. And you will be able to truly take advantage of your growth mindset. Good luck to you. I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for listening. And if the thing that you want to master is conquering your fear of public speaking, then definitely check out my Brilliant Speakers Academy coaching program. You can learn more about it and apply at www.brilliantspeakersacademy.com. Have a fantastic week, and I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye for now.